Hey everyone! Today we're going to use our knowledge of geometric and organic shapes to draw a quartz crystal cluster. What you're going to need for this week's art project is a piece of white paper. If you have thicker paper like watercolor paper, that would work best, but just a regular piece of copy paper will do as well. You're also going to need a pencil and a black permanent marker or a black pen. I'm going to be actually using a black pen for this project, but it's really up to you. You're also going to need some washable markers, a cup of water, and a paintbrush. Now, if you don't have a little paintbrush at home, you can always use a Q-tip. So this is a real quartz cluster, and let's take a look at it. You see there are many different quartz crystal shapes that are all clustered together into one beautiful formation, and we're going to use this as inspiration for our drawing. So find the middle of your paper, and with your pencil, somewhere near the middle, we're going to start by drawing a triangle. Now remember, we're using geometric shapes to draw our quartz crystals, so make sure that your triangle is nice and even. After you're done with your triangle, you're going to draw one line down from the left corner of your triangle and one line down from the right corner. You can see here that I used a ruler to make that line extra straight. If you struggle with making your lines really straight, go ahead and grab a ruler to help you. So next, this part's pretty important. Look at my angle. I just drew an angle down from the very top of my triangle over to the right. Next, I'm going to draw an angled line up to meet that line. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're going to draw an angled line down to the left. But we're going to stop. We're not going all the way down here, right? We want to make sure that our line stops right before the bottom of the triangle. So since that line's a little long, I'm going to erase it and make sure that your line is at the same height that mine is. And we're just going to do the same thing that we did on the other side and draw a nice little straight line connecting them. There we go. And that's the top portion of our quartz crystal. Next, we need to draw two straight lines down from either side. These lines can get a little wobbly, especially if you are not the best straight line drawer. So I recommend using a ruler to help you draw by lining it up wherever you want your line and using your pencil by drawing against the ruler. That will help you get a nice straight edge. Let's look at the bottom of this quartz cluster. So you can see that the bottom shape is sort of organic and rigid. It's more of an organic line, something that doesn't have these straight angles and edges. It's just kind of free-formed, so I'm just drawing this sort of free-formed line at the bottom of my quartz crystal. Looking again at this cluster, we can see that there are crystals going in many different directions. Some are overlapping in front of others, so it gives it kind of an interesting look. I'm going to use this cluster to inspire my quartz crystals in my drawing. So I'm going to include some overlapping here, and my next quartz crystal in the cluster that I'm drawing is going to be coming out from the right-hand side of my first crystal that I drew. Now, instead of drawing my triangle first, I'm going to draw two parallel straight lines, and then I'm going to draw my triangle on top of them. If you don't want to draw your next quartz crystal in this exact spot, you could be creative. You could draw yours on the other side, or lower down coming off of that crystal. It's up to you where you want to draw each of your crystals for your cluster. So you see that I drew my two parallel lines and my triangle on top. That is the basic shape for my next crystal. Okay, next is my angled line down and then that angled line up to connect. Just drawing lots of geometric shapes that are connected to each other here. Since quartz crystals are naturally geometric in nature, it only makes sense that we're using geometric shapes to draw them, like triangles and rectangles. You see that I messed up my line there. It was a little wavy, so I erased it, and I want to make sure that when I draw the sides and all of the geometric shapes on my quartz crystals, that they are nice and straight and even. Remember, geometric shapes are shapes that have perfect angles, perfect sides. So you want to make it as perfect and accurate as you can. Okay, next I'm just kind of tracing out the bottom of my cluster, kind of how big I want this whole thing to be. And then I'm just going to draw some more crystals. I'm going to draw a smaller but really thick crystal in the center here. And when I reach the bottom, I'm sort of drawing that nice organic shape, that organic line. The next crystal we're going to be drawing is called a window quartz crystal. This is called a window quartz because of this little diamond shaped, it almost looks like a little window on certain quartz crystals. So not all crystals look like this. You can see that little diamond shape there. But I think adding it to our picture, adding it to our quartz cluster will add some variety to our artwork. So you can see that I just drew this little diamond or kite shape, and then I'm going to draw a line angled up towards the right and a line down. And I'm going to just make a horizontal line now to connect everything. So it's basically like a triangle with a little kite shape in the left-hand corner. Then I'm just going to continue drawing my quartz crystal as normal, as I showed you previously. And I'm going to draw a line down here from the bottom of my kite or diamond shape, making sure to stop when I reach another quartz crystal. I'm going to do the same thing on the left corner of that diamond or kite shape. Now I'm just going to continue drawing my crystal as if nothing was changed or different. Okay everyone, I'm going to continue drawing some more quartz crystals here onto my cluster, making it as big as I want. Please remember when you're drawing your quartz crystals to take your time. Make sure that all of your edges are nice and straight. And remember that you don't have to draw your quartz crystals in the exact same positions that mine are in. You can kind of have fun with it and decide where you want crystals to be sticking out on your cluster. So I'll catch up with you in a bit. Okay, I've finished up my cluster drawing, and the next step is to take either a black pen or a black permanent marker and outline all of your drawing with either that pen or the permanent marker. You can see here that I'm using a black ballpoint pen, and I'm going over each of my lines a few times to make those lines a little bit thicker. This will help to add some contrast to my artwork. So I'm going to outline everything, and I'll see you in a moment. Now that I've outlined all of my pencil marks with my pen and I've erased any pencil in the background, we're going to talk a little bit about striations. You can see here on this smoky quartz that I have that it has a window formation, just like we drew previously, but it also has these sets of horizontal lines or ridges. Those are called striations, and I think adding those to our quartz crystals will not only help to add texture and value, but it will also help to make them look even more realistic. So I'm using my black pen to draw these striation lines, and I'm not pressing hard, and I'm not drawing the lines all the way across to the other side. I'm just drawing some varied line here. Some are short, some are a little longer, but they're all that same angle as the bottom of our triangle. I hope that makes sense. So if you used a Sharpie marker or a permanent marker to outline all of your crystals, I definitely recommend switching to either a really thin marker that's permanent or a black pen to draw these striations on each of your crystal faces. So I'm going to continue drawing my striations, nice and light, on the front of each of my quartz crystals. Okay, I've finished up drawing my striations on my crystals, and I think that it adds a nice texture. Now you could be done here. However, I think that this project will really pop when we add some colors. So here I have some washable Crayola markers. This part of the project will not work unless you have washable markers, okay? And I have them separated into two color groups. I have my warm colors up here in my left hand, my cool colors in my right hand. I decided I want to use some cool colors for my quartz crystals. So I'm selecting some cool colors like light blue and dark blue and blue-green. We want to make sure to select light colors for this part. We don't want to mix colors that will turn a yucky brown color. For example, blue and orange. When you mix those together, they turn brown. So make sure that when you select your colors, you're choosing colors that mix well together, like light blue and dark blue, purple and pink, red and orange, orange and yellow. Just use colors that mix well together. Okay, so now I want to create a nice watercolor effect on my crystals. Quartz crystals are see-through or transparent. And to do this, what I'm going to do is just take one of my markers and draw a line right next to each of my geometric shape lines. You can see I'm not coloring everything in. I'm just sort of outlining some of my lines, okay? So I'm doing this with one color first. What we're doing here is we're depositing some color for us to work with when we add our water, and that will turn these lines into a sort of watercolor paint. Now I've decided to switch it up with some light blue. If you just want to use one color for this, that is okay, but I do suggest using darker values. You can see the first color that I used was that darker teal color. And this light blue, while it's really beautiful, it just doesn't mix very well with water. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a little bit when I start to add some water. Okay, I've finished adding all of my lines of color here, and now I'm grabbing my jar of water and my paintbrush. Remember, if you don't have a little paintbrush at home to use, you could always use a Q-tip as your paintbrush. So what I'm doing here is I'm dipping my brush into my water, I'm swiping off the excess, and I'm going to choose an area to start. I think I'm going to start on this crystal. I'm just adding my wet paintbrush onto my marker and dragging the color over into the white area. Let's have a closer look. So you can see my wet paintbrush is going on that marker. I'm creating my watercolor paint right on top of that marker and just dragging it over into the white parts of my crystals, just like so. So I'm going to continue doing this a little bit and I'll catch up with you in a moment. Okay, remember when I said that light value, that light blue doesn't really work too well with water? Well, you can see why. It's because it's such a light value, of blue that it really just doesn't show up too much when I mix it with my water. So what I'm doing is going back in with a darker blue color and I'm just going over my light blues wherever I use light blue in my drawing. Now, if you used a lighter value like yellow, you might want to go over it with a color like orange or something like that so that you get a good amount of watercolor paint to work with. So now I'm going over this with some water again, and it looks like it's working a little bit better now that I have that darker color of marker. I do have to mention too, make sure that your markers are pretty fresh or this won't work that well. Now I want to show you a trick that I came up with, boys and girls. This is a dinner plate. It's just a cheap ceramic plate. And I'm going to use it to create watercolor paint. Now, boys and girls, important message here, please get your parents' permission before you do this, if you're going to do this at all, okay? I have my washable Crayola marker, and I'm coloring on my cheap ceramic dinner plate. Remember, this is washable, non-toxic marker, so it will come off. But again, please ask your parents' permission. Get your parents' help with this if you're going to go down this road. Okay, so you see that I just colored on my plate and I added some water with my paintbrush, and that created watercolor. That's right, I am a magician. I created watercolor paint right on my plate. And now I'm just going to use some of that watercolor paint to finish painting the rest of my crystals. I'm also just going to go back and forth between using my jar of water and the paint that I created on my plate. Again, boys and girls, can I say it again? Please get your parents' permission before you do this part. Make sure that they lend you a plate, if you're allowed to do it, that is cheap and that is not super, super, super expensive. This will wash right off. It won't leave any stains, it won't leave any marks. But again, I don't want to get in trouble, and I don't want you to get in trouble either. Okay, so you can see that I'm continuing to use the watercolor that I created to fill in the rest of the area on my crystals here. And I do notice there is an empty space between my crystals here, and I'm just going to fill it in with some watercolor and pretend that there's a crystal there. I think that just helps to tie everything together nicely. Okay, wow, I'm done with my quartz crystal cluster. Boys and girls, look at that. It looks so realistic. So now I just want to show you real quick how to clean off that plate. You just take a paper towel or a napkin, a little water, and it wipes right off. And make sure that you wash this with soap and water before you eat off of it. Just wanted to show you how easy that is. So let's get back to that artwork. So the reason that we drew these darker lines on the edges of our crystals is because quartz crystals are transparent, but they do have certain areas of shadow, just kind of like where I drew them on my crystals, right? Okay, another thing is if you wanted to add more to your picture, feel free. You can add a background or a pattern or anything you would like around it. You could cut your crystals out and paste them to a different piece of paper. It's really up to you. I want you to be creative and to have fun. Boys and girls, I cannot wait to see your quartz crystal clusters. I hope you had fun with this project.